there. There,
Oh,
we
I
are
see we're live.
Yes.
Awesome. And Megan, can you confirm we're recording now?
Yes, as soon as we're live, it's recording.
Fantastic. Hi, folks. Garrett French here with Citation Labs. Welcome to our first ever webinar. I have Megan Hene with me here today. She'll be helping us find our way through this this webinar technically. She'll also be assisting with questions as well. So the topic of today's webinar is agency hacks, agency link building hacks for the in-house SEO team. So we're going to talk as clearly and helpfully as we're able to about how we think about link building and how we approach link building and how a smaller in-house team could use our methodologies for going big. So before getting started, we've got a few housekeeping items to go over here. First and foremost, there's two ways you can talk to Megan and get your questions to me. So the first is on Twitter, and we're using a hashtag for this webinar. The hashtag is Citation Labs Chat, all one word, of course. And you could also at Citation Labs if you wanted to, or I think Megan's going to be monitoring that as well. Alternately, there should be a chat box on the in the Hangout as well, so you could speak directly to her there. Also, we'll be writing a blog post, a sort of a follow-up to this. So if we don't get to everyone's questions, we will answer as everything that we're able to answer in a follow-up blog post. So we will get to you, I promise. Lastly, we'll be making some articles built around some of the topics we'll be covering today. So each one of these sections, we have 4 sections today. Each one of them could really be an article topic. As I was writing out my notes, I sort of recognized that these are some pretty big ideas. So each one is sort of deserving of its own article. So we'll probably be doing. I'll be doing that as well. So you can be watching if you prefer to read. You can get a little more thorough written examples there. So with that said, I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see the outline for today's discussion, and we'll jump right in. Let's see here. I'm going to go screen share. All right, folks. Now we are lo-fi today. We're just again finding our way forward as with webinars. This is our very first one. So our emphasis has been thus far on high utility, making things very, very useful as possible, and we then will follow up with making them beautiful. They're not beautiful yet, but the value, I believe, is there. So thank you. So hack number 1. I'm going to overview the hacks first. I want you to know we have 4 that we're going to be going over today. So the first one is to know the broadest categories of human concern, and then how to design content that intersects with them. Now, this might be a bit more than a hack, right? So this is a big idea here, but it's vital to really tapping into methodologies and processes that will help you essentially do more with less, to build more links with less work. Number 2 is prospecting based on these broad areas of human concern. Hack number 3 is think of content as a product. We believe content is a product, and so we really approach it that way. And when you approach content in that manner, it becomes much easier to build links to it. Lastly is optimizations of task assignment and team structure. So those are the 4 areas we'll be going into today. But first, the broadest areas of human concern and how to design content that intersects with them. So this has been a sort of gradual development for us as an agency. We didn't start building content this way or thinking about content this way. We just realized that some things really got links and some things really didn't. We started off going big in the addiction space. So it was link building was relatively easy in the addiction space, right? So we got a little bit cocky and then tried to move into other verticals and sort of stumbled a bit. So what we started asking is, why are we able to build links so effectively in the addiction space, but perhaps not quite as effectively in the Viagra space, for example? Anyhow, what we started to do was think a little more carefully about where links exist, and so what we've arrived at is this sort of structure of where we believe the majority, statistically speaking, all of the links pages on the internet fall into one of these 5 categories, right? So yes, they're very broad and perhaps not super useful at the very largest, highest scale that we present them here. So you do have to get more granular down within the categories to arrive at a productive way forward. But this is how we think about essentially how content on the internet is, how it's topically organized. So of course, folks, the reason why we think about it this way is because this allows us to design content that's going to be have maximum linkability, have the maximum number of link prospects to it. So we go really big. I'm going to run through these briefly, and then I'm going to run through them with an example. So the example is going to be Bob the Plumber. Now, I'd love for anyone listening to make some suggestions of topics they'd like for me to run through, just so you can get a feel for how we kind of take apart a topic and align it or intersect it with one of these broad areas of human concern. So just run through them. Economy, we've got stuff like jobs, business, personal finance, finance markets. So kind of big picture stuff. As we try to intersect it as closely as possible with a real immediate human concern. So having a job is one of those sort of primary fundamental human concerns. Health is another big one. We've got addiction, heart health, any kind of disabilities. Seniors can be a health area also. One note, as I'm running through these, you'll notice that you could probably intersect a lot of these broad categories as well. So you could have a guide to a piece of content on seniors and jobs, or seniors in finance, or disabilities and jobs. So there's a lot of potential intersect between these broad categories as well. So you really need to know these categories and sort of be able to identify them quickly, and it's going to really help you with essentially brainstorming productive content. Then education. Now this is education broadly. So K through 12 stuff here in the U.S. Would be Common Core subjects, math, science. I don't know what the English. And then it's more how-to practical type stuff. So DIY stuff. Then we have societal ills. So again, this is a really broad category, and there's intersections with health. There's intersections with economy here in societal ills, but we do try to break them out so we can kind of run through these concepts thoroughly. When we're brainstorming, we try to be as thorough as possible and think about how could a given client or a given objective intersect with one of these sorts of big picture categories. So societal ills, poverty, abuse of any kind, pollution, polluting the earth, polluting the oceans, those sorts of things. And we have lifestyle, and this is sort of I threw this one in at the end, and there's some really important categories here as well, where people are very where people have lots and lots of where there are lots of links pages, but I just threw pets and travel on there. It's sort of my catch-all. I would definitely say LGBT stuff could fit there really well. But again, pets, travel, LGBT, all intersect across economy, health, some societal ills. So there's ways to kind of mix and match all of these broad categories as you proceed. but we'll you know, when we go kind of work through and brainstorm out examples, we will I'll sort of demonstrate how we think about it. So we're going to run through Bob the Plumber, right? So I've got a few of these already. I've got them kind of written down. I cheated a little bit. I'm not going to come up with these on the fly. Your suggestions I will, though. But so economy, number one. So thinking about jobs. So a guide to becoming a plumber, right? So state by state, you know, you really get down in the U.S., go state by state and show how you could become a plumber. What does it take? What certifications do you need? How does it differ from state to state? Resources for plumbing interns, right? So that I'm aware of, there's no such thing as a plumbing intern, right? You kind of get a job or you don't. You maybe have done some training or you haven't. But why aren't there plumbing interns? So I think again, you know, that intersects with getting a job or helping people with making money, and I think that it's somewhat of a novel concept, at least as far as I know. I certainly didn't dig in too deeply on that one, but you know, if you pitch that kind of concept, I think you could get some, and you built a supporting infrastructure or portion of your website for helping connect potential plumbing interns with potential plumbers, and then you pitch that to high schools and community colleges and local plumbing associations. I think you could build a good number of links and build some good PR around it too. So I have others, but I'm going to move on to health now because this is a part that I love so much, so I'll end up talking about this for the entire webinar. Health. So thought on this: become the national go-to source for disability or accessible toilets and bathrooms, right? So there probably are guides out there, but let's say, you know, let's look at all of them. This would be at the research phase, but you know, gather up all the guides, read them all, basically try to put all the information together in one place. Secondarily, you could say, all right, who are all the plumbers that have a specialty in accessible bathroom design or accessible bathroom modifications? Probably not everyone in a given area does, and if you could assemble a collection of these types of individuals, these types of businesses with that specialty, that list in itself would be highly linkable, right? And if you assembled a national resource like that, then we'd be talking about something that could be seriously linkable. Let's see. Oh, this one's a little bit vulgar, but illness detection based on your excretion. So, you know, hit mute if you don't want to hear about it. But you know, what do the certain smells or appearances indicate about your health, right? Because that actually is a valid way to test for illness. Not how I test, but it potentially could be a warning sign, right? So if you had a printable guide for people to hang up in their bathrooms, I guess, not the most lovely bathroom art, but could potentially be something that you could earn some links with. Education. Let's look at the history of plumbing, right? So how has man's capacity to manipulate water changed culture, right? Or changed the size of cities we're able to have. It's enabled agriculture. If you take just the idea of being able to move water around without leaking it everywhere, which is essentially what plumbing is, and you go way back, now we get something that's really starts to get interesting. I mean, I would watch a documentary on that. So I think that's could be a really interesting way to go. The hydrodynamics of plumbing. Let's intersect with, I guess that's physics. I don't even know. I'd have to learn more about it. But a guide to teaching hydrodynamics with basic plumbing equipment and supplies. Like, wow, what a cool plumber! You know, what a cool plumbing website that would be. And if the plumber that you were working for was actually involved in that, it could be in some of the videos. That could be pretty interesting and useful as well. Now, again, some of this is I'll acknowledge is far-fetched in that we are, you know, most plumbers probably aren't going to either have the money for this or want to do it. It's just an example, and you can take. So I usually think very, very big, and then we kind of dial it back to a minimum viable product. We'll come around to that though. But now let's dig in on societal ills. So clean water initiatives around the world. So how to how to help others in other countries have cleaner water. How to become an advocate. How to fight water pollution in your area. So it could be a map of where of the U.S. or wherever you are in the country or in the world rather, and show where the most pollution is and what people can do to make a difference. And then lastly, lifestyle. So making a pet-proof bathroom, right? Like how to make sure that you're, just to be blunt, how to make sure your dog doesn't drown in the toilet. How to make sure your cat stays safe in the bathroom. I think could be an interesting, especially if you're very thorough. Again, I think it could be a very interesting guide. Lastly, something along the lines of pipe break prevention, the long-term traveler's guide to pipe safety, or so you don't come home to have to a house that's been destroyed by water. So that's a quick run through for Bob the plumber. Let's see. We've got quite a few requests from folks here. I'm going to scroll through these real. Holy moly! Oh goodness gracious! These are all so good. I don't know where to start here. And I'd like to be, Megan. Will you? So I'm going to try to run through one of these in 3 minutes. Megan, will you please IM me when kind of 3 minutes is up, so we're not on this too long. And then what we can do is, I would, if you guys are up for it for another webinar down the road, maybe just run, just do brainstorming and around these areas of human concern. But I'm going to, whoa, a linkable asset will be for a solvent recycling company. Holy moly, that's interesting. So there's always some conversation that has to happen with the client around what they're comfortable with, right? So what level of relevance they require, and how close the content is going to be to their content marketing cycles. So you want it to be as close as possible to attracting customers, right? But at the same time, you need to build links. So there's always this balance that has to happen. We have some clients who are comfortable with very sort of distant relationships between the content and what they actually do. Then we of course have some clients that are very that aren't quite so comfortable with that. So that's if you're an agency, and certainly the in-house folks need to think about this too. You have to say where is the kind of the comfort level with these stakeholders on exactly how relevant we are to our customers. So for solvent recycling, first of all, I want to know who creates solvents that require recycling, because that's our market. That's what kind of would be sort of a starting point there. And then I take a step back and say, well, how do we intersect with solvent recycling and solvent creators? These folks who have these solvents that need to be recycled. How do we think about what their circumstances are like? What are the realities within their marketplaces and their ecosystems? And then how do we intersect that with these sort of higher level topics? I mean, I could see education, a chemistry-oriented education kind of topic working there. Health, I certainly think would be a big one. I'm really not versed on what solvents are exactly, but my presumption is that if they require recycling, you can't just pour them down the sink, that they're dangerous. So how do we, what what kinds of guides can we create for safety guides. So safety is one of the key areas within health as well. So how do we keep people safe, I think, is a really important one. Jobs in these various industries. So I love job guides and either how to get a job or where to look for jobs within a given industry. I think are always very linkable, and you can intersect then with college career pages. So this is a lot of universities have like for their engineering department, they will have a engineering careers section. So your guide to getting your first job in whatever industries create solvents would be kind of one way to kind of start to intersect with that particular market. Societal ills. I mean, my assumption is that pollution would be kind of high level, massive scale pollution could be a potential area of concern here. You may not want to touch on that for this particular client. They may not want to. They may have to show the egg on the face of some of their clients, so that may be a non-starter. But again, these are all, that's sort of the delicate balance you have to walk with these. And I see. Thank you, Megan. So let's see. I see one also. Well, we should probably go on, and I'll tell you what. If we have time at the end, then we'll do some more. So you can shoot some more at us. We'd be happy to review them and kind of that could be one of our follow-up pieces of follow-up article, and we'll kind of run through these various niches and kind of think them through with these areas of human concern, these core areas of human concern. And I also want to say we have thought about this a lot as a company, but I don't think that we have the final sort of template for what the areas of human concern are. I don't think we're done with it. This is sort of a beta thing for us, but it's working, and it's an effective way to generate concepts. But it's not. There's probably stuff that's missing from here. So let's move on to the next. We're going to look at prospecting within the broadest areas of human concern. And this is why we think in very broad strokes, or as broad as we can, is so that we open ourselves up to as many prospects as possible. So let's see, let's say for Bob the Plumber, we came up with a water conservation guide. So the lovely thing about water conservation and sort of clean water sorts of things are that there are thousands of pages on the internet that are about this topic, and there are a very large subset of those pages are links pages, links and resource pages, and that's really what we as an agency, what we think about is who are these linking pages, or who runs them, what are they about, how do we fit on those pages. So this is prospecting is absolutely is one of the, I think, one of the most important parts, but it's also, as you're developing concepts, you should sort of be prospecting along the way. So just to verify that this is going to be a good, sort of a good direction, right? A productive direction. So one thing we always do is well, I always use the link prospector, of course, and so I would select the links pages report type, and then I have to come up with prospecting phrases, right? I need 5 prospecting phrases. So this is crucial. We've got a few different ways we come up with these prospecting phrases. Okay, so I really like to have more than 5, but I think if you're in-house, you should, and I think 5 is a good, really good place to start. So you really want to have the 5 most productive websites. I'm sorry, research phrases. So how do you determine research phrase productivity? Like, how do you know you're going to have a good productive research phrase? So I would come over to Google, I'll type water conservation, and I'm going to look at who's ranking for just this highest level. We're not going to be right. We're not even trying to come into their SERP at all. We just want to know who's there, right? And why and what kinds of terms are on the page. So this is great. So obviously I would just use water conservation as a, you know, in quotes though. I really like, and this is another sort of little nuts and bolts hack, but I really like to have quotes around my prospecting phrases because I know I'm going to be having pages that are just about, or links pages that are just about water conservation. Because if you dig down, so we like to scrape down to 100 results. So if you go down, the deeper you go, the more Google guesses. So that's kind of how the link prospector operates. Is it's well, to put it delicately, we are utilizing queries at a large scale, and if you are searching for water conservation without quotes, with something like this inurl links.html is a little test footprint I use a lot. So look at the difference in results. So that's without quotes, it has 8,970 results. With quotes, we drop down to 3,370. Now, I'm much more confident that these pages, especially the top 100, are going to be about water conservation, whereas without quotes, I'm less confident because the words water and conservation, you know, may not be right next to each other. Well, it looks like they mostly are as I'm scrolling down through here. So here's one, water pollution. So this page, it would probably be a great page for what we're creating, but point being, I think how I typically work is to put quotes around stuff like water conservation, so that I'm more precise and more exact, so that I'm more, so that topically and from a relevance perspective, I'm finding more productive pages, right? So let's put water conservation in quotes. We definitely want to use that one. I've got it already. So and then here's another. This is one of my favorite hacks of all time. So is using as a search operator or as a research phrase the domain of a highly ranking high utility website. So if anybody, so let's run that. So where's our? Here we go. Let's take that water. See that water conservation there? Let's throw water user wisely in there. So 20 results, but what we know is that everybody that is linking to water use it wisely with this, and this is just one. So just so you know, the link prospector uses about 40 of these types of qualifiers to find links pages. So you put this in. So it also uses stuff like links.html. So that has 3 results, but you get all those links ASP. Well, the only one there, but you get that one too. That's a PR, so you wouldn't want to use that one. But anyhow, I like to use I call them authority anchors. So this is a very common sort of when people link to water, use it wisely. Actually, let's take that www off there and see what happens. I wonder if that. So this is what I do a lot when I'm prospecting. As I say, I wonder what if it would happen if. So it does look like people are linking to water use it wisely without the www in front of it. And now let's look at this. Let's throw this in there and see what comes back. Oh, nothing. So that's interesting too. See if it just links. So neither of those, as I had hoped, well, the water user wisely was productive, but the EPA was not. So what now you know not to use, or I would know not to use EPA, and so the hack there is simply testing your research phrases before you use them. I do that constantly, and what you find is you know as you poke around and you disqualify certain phrases. You can, in some cases, find new research phrases. So anyhow, let me see what we've got here. Okay, let me see. Okay, so we covered authority, anchor-based prospecting. Oh, I forgot to, forgot to ask if you have any questions. So that was what I just talked about was prospecting with authority anchors, prospecting with high-level areas of human concern, phrases that target high levels of human concern. So water conservation is an example of one of those. One other thing I would suggest is looking on, actually going to pages that are about water conservation HTML, and let's go down here and sort of see what types of anchors are here. So this looks like a local links page, local water conservation page. So I see Department of Natural Resources here. Now, it's probably presumptive to assume that a page that links to a Department of Natural Resources is going to be interested in linking to us. Maybe not overly, though, right? It's because it may be a little too broad, but that starts to get interesting, right? Department of Natural Resources. Let's see what comes back with Department of Natural Resources, in quotes. So what I want to, that's a pretty solid direction right there, I would say, for sort of starting to dig in and see what kinds of content is being linked to from some of our target pages. And this wasn't one of the hacks, but I sort of stumbled into it in the discussion, but kind of testing your queries, your prospecting phrases, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's one of those tasks that will lead you to new directions. So I'm seeing stuff come up like invasive species. Now that's a societal ill. That's one of those potential societal ills. Now it doesn't intersect with everyone, but if you can find an intersect, then you've got a really good way forward. I saw someone mention pest control. So invasive species is, that would be a very natural connection there. Now, sorry for the folks with lawyers. I don't know how we would tie that into invasive species necessarily. But anyhow, I hope that I've illustrated kind of how prospecting can do a number of things for you for your processes, namely validate a direction. So I would definitely say water conservation is a good way forward. It can potentially uncover new ways forward, new types of or new categories of or subcategories rather of the 5 main areas of concern, linkable intersects, and it ultimately, if you're spending some time on these linking pages, you're getting a sense of what types of content is the most important within this category, and you really can't beat an eye on the page for coming up with intersects, right? So let's see here. We've I guess I would request if anybody has any questions on any of the prospecting that we've covered thus far, that you get them in right now, and if not, we'll get back to it after in our follow-up article. All right, content is a product. So this is a fun sort of way for us that we sort of discovered recently for thinking about content. We started to ask our question, is a 300-word article really? Oh, excuse me, one moment. I did get a question on the on prospecting. Why am I using inurl links.html instead of just inurl links? The tool does use inurl links. It also uses inurl links.html. What adding that .html to the end does is it further forces Google to present us with resources or pages that may not have appeared when we searched for inurl links. just links alone. So it squeezes up new quality prospects into that top 100, right? So and that's usually all we're looking at. What the tool also does is it dedupes. So if something, so there will be duplicate occurrences of pages, right, within a links.html and just an inurl links. So the tool dedupes those, and so you're only seeing one example. So it's a way of increasing the number of when you're sort of bulk prospecting, it's a way of increasing the number of probable quality pages. Now, why do I use that when I'm testing instead of just inurl links? Is because I know that if I find 1,000 plus pages with an inurl links.html, that I'm onto something. I'm onto a quality topic. I'm onto a category, right? Or a subcategory of one of the main human concern categories. So that's a great question, and thank you for it, because it helped me illustrate that kind of how we look for these categories. Is one indicator to us that we're onto something is 1,000 plus links pages. So that Department of Natural Resources query that we did, and we saw 6,000 results for inurl links.html, that put up a few exclamation points for me. That's interesting. How do we dig into that and sort of uncover what would be linkable to those pages that are linking to the departments of natural resources? So great question. Let's see. So content is a product. So what's happened for us recently is we have a really big team of people that are involved in data gathering. So they started out just as contact finders. We do have a tool for contact finding, but we found it wasn't precise enough and fast enough, and that we had to end up kind of sort of checking it anyhow at the scale we're working. It's still, I think it's an effective tool for some folks. But anyhow, we have a big, we call them our data team though. And we needed to use them in different ways when we were done, when we had spare work cycles, right? Because we get done with all our contact finding, like, well, okay, what are we going to do? So we started, it was about that time that we started recognizing that some of the most linkable assets we could create were really not articles. And that's sort of our bread and butter for a long time. We're really large guides to this or that. And there would be, the senior's guide to safe air travel, or something that it has intersects with one or more of these areas of human concern, and then a topic that's interesting to the client or that's relevant to the client. And that's what we created a lot of these types of guides. But we started recognizing if we can, for example, create a database that where we really found effective was on event calendars. So we said, okay, how do we make an event calendar that is going to be relevant to the client and useful to potential linkers, right? So we found a great plugin. It's tri.be for calendars. It's very, very easy to work with. But the tricky thing was that there are no data feeds for events, especially not in areas where we're going to be productive, where it's going to be productive to build these, because people simply haven't organized all the events into a single place, into a single location. And there's really no effective way to scrape events. You could find a handful of events pages and scrape. I mean, you could scrape the data off of them, but they're not structured enough. Oddly, believe it or not, you would think that they're on a calendar, so they'd be fairly easy to scrape, but they're just not. But they are easy for a team of people to go through and say, okay, here's an event, and add it to this spreadsheet. Then the spreadsheet uploads to the calendar, and then after we get a few hundred targeted events in there, you can go out and promote it. One example would be someone mentioned Halloween. So this would be, I guess, it'll fall into the lifestyle category, but Halloween events calendar, like Halloween parades, haunted houses. Probably you'd want to go narrow. There's a lot of Halloween events, but if you just did the major Halloween parades, I think that could be pretty interesting. Zombie runs would probably be a good one for a Halloween-related website. But the calendars were what sort of started us saying, okay, we can use our team for data collection, think of them as a data team, and start building out directories, essentially directories or databases of content that we can publish that other people simply haven't done. Now, there's I love the example, and I'll have to put it up in follow-up, but there's a swimming pool locator that's a public swimming pool locator. I think there's really only one really good one. It is lovely. So it's international. People have rated the swimming pools. There's directions there. They've classified them based on whether they're Olympic or for kids or for if they have laps, the best times to go there. I mean, everything that a real serious swimmer is going to care about, they have a column for in their in their database. It is absolutely awesome. So where does that fit into human concern? I'm not exactly sure, but I will say it's information that's difficult to come by just with a regular Google search, right? This is a type of database that Google simply can't, or I mean, I won't say can't, but doesn't make sense for them to focus on, right? So, and that's how we think about content as a product a lot of times, is what is difficult to find, what kinds of information is difficult to find or sought after in this vertical, and how can we align it with an area of human concern, and then how do we create a database around it, and using our data team. So that's how we think about this a lot. So let's see. Oh yeah, a new. Let's see. So let's see. We've got calendars and locators. So being able to find an actual the DMV locators, I think, are a lovely example. There's a website that helps you find DMVs. So think about what is difficult to find for your target market, and then start to look and see if there are going to be supporting linkers for it. That's the other. And as a prospector, if you are honing your skills as a prospector, that's how you can really qualify and validate an idea. Are there going to be supporting linkers for this concept? And I so often we see people approach link building from an SEO perspective, where you're saying, okay, how do I find pages that are about this product, rather than kind of backing away from building links to individual pages and saying, how do we really create something that's going to be useful to our market, besides just, I mean, I can't necessarily help you with building links to your money pages, but it definitely, coming up with great content concepts, that's I think the strongest way forward for kind of large scale link building. So let's see. So once you've got a concept, right? You've thought it through. You're like, okay, and I'm not trying to raise the bar here, guys, because this is kind of would be a little tougher for an in-house team. This actual aspect, thinking of content as a product, but you can still think of large guides, right? Like 1,000-word, 1,500-word guide as a content product. How do I make this as useful as possible? How, let's say you're linking to 15 different locators within it. So that starts to get interesting if you're rating the locators, right? So you don't have to be, when I say database, and we have a team of 25 people doing this for us now, but it doesn't have to be 1,000 entries in your database. You could have a list of 15 or 50, or it could be smaller. It could be something that you generate over a couple hours, and as long as you're reasonably sure it's going to be linkable, then you can scale down what that looks like. But how thinking of this as a product sort of shifted things for us was, we said, who is our target market and what problems are they having? So we've even done customer surveys before, which will help you kind of pinpoint problems, and then kind of sort of fold that problem into this process. We've asked linkers before, and that's one of my favorites, is when you're sort of you can pitch linkers, like, hey, we're working on this guide that we think is going to solve this problem. Is this something that you think would be useful? If so, can you can you give us a few suggestions of resources we could look at? Just sort of start a conversation and let them know that you're trying to do something big. We have a big guide on being on a mission, so we're really big about having a mission. And when you're connecting up with these big areas of human concern, you can be on that mission. Customer surveys, staff surveys. Talk to your team in customer support. What are the problems people are having? I think that's a huge area for discovering content, ways forward for content. And then of course the linkers themselves. The absolute best is getting on the phone with a linker. I mean, you're going to learn if you at the beginning of a project say, all right, I'm going to talk to five potential linkers. Now, you're not asking them for a link. You're treating them as a research partner or as an expert. You're sort of interviewing them, but saying, hey, we've got this idea that we think is going to help the market in this way, right? And by market, I don't necessarily mean your target market. I mean like this broader area of human concern market. Like this is something that will help disabled people do this or that. This is something that will help seniors do this or that. I'd love to talk with you, pick your brain for 15 minutes at some point. When could we speak? But you're reaching out to linkers and treating them with the utmost respect and trying to work, sort of validate a concept with them. Getting on the phone with linkers will change your life. If you can build that into your approach, you will really start to see a difference in getting these links. So let's see. We've gotten so then absolutely think about what your end product looks like in terms of minimum viable product. What is the least you can do that will be useful? I'm not talking about being lazy. I'm not talking about setting yourself short. I'm talking about being realistic and having a shippable, publishable product. I think a first step on something would be a list of 50 somethings that are hard to find and for seniors with disabilities, for example, and then show that to your potential linkers and say, hey, we've started this. Is this a direction you think would be useful for seniors? If so, how do you think we could make it even more useful? And start to have those kinds of conversations, but get something out there. I mean, that's the be-all, end-all of this type of work. Is you have to do something. You have to get something published. I'm seeing some great further questions come in. And I'll touch on those at the very end. We're getting close to the end here now. Thank you guys for staying with us so long. It's nice to have you here. I know we're a little dry in terms of visuals, but I hope I hope your ears are happy. So hack number 4 here: optimize task assignment and team structure. Okay. So this is, I want to talk a little bit about how we do things, and then how I've heard of other agencies doing things, and then how I've heard of some in-house teams doing things. And there's a lot to be said for the different methods. So they're there for, it's not that anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just that the processes that are there support the requirements or the needs of these various teams. But I'm going to run through them all so you have some, a bit more of a basis for making selections and how you structure and organize things for yourself. So we structure things. There's strategy. This is what I usually do for clients, is really thinking as thoroughly as possible. I've got a team. We have a little stew pot meeting where we bounce around ideas and then come back with a pitch. But but what goes on there is the research, content brainstorming, concept validation, and then sort of prospects, the beginning stages of prospecting. So next steps are prospecting and then prospect qualification. So a lot of this, the prospecting is I still do the majority of this for our company. I hear about a lot of agencies where basically the link builder or the SEO or whoever, or a lot of times interns are the ones doing prospecting. There's nothing wrong with that, but you get a seasoned link builder or you get a seasoned strategist in there starting to poke around and do prospecting. And that's someone who's going to start to see new directions, new possible directions. And so I would submit humbly that as much as possible, you keep your strategy person doing some of the prospecting. Not all of it, but so we'll do prospecting recipes sometimes. I'll say, all right, here's the direction I'm thinking. Let me know some research phrases you think we should use. And so that's how I work with my team sometimes. And then of course qualification. So qualifying prospects, removing, like, what are we definitely going to remove? Setting some we don't usually use metrics, and a lot of people ask us about, that's actually a concern that clients have sometimes is, well, we want a minimum DA of 20 or this or that, and we can and do work that way for folks who have that preference. But we also believe in building links that are real. So and really kind of favoring that over a domain authority based approach to value ultimately. Because that's what's at the core of the question is, what's the value of this link? So we believe that a editorially granted link is a valuable link, kind of in and of itself. Now, of course, we've built links from sites like USDA.gov, weather.gov, U.S. Embassy, on and on. But those are going to have more weight for sure. But you don't want to pass up something that's a quality website just because the DA is 10, right? I mean, why wouldn't you get a link from it? That's my opinion. There's people have different beliefs and opinions on that, but that's our position. Anyhow, we do qualification, of course. Then we have the content creation, which is its own sort of phase as well, or its own team. We have contact gathering. Then we have the outreach and follow-up. And then that, of course, feeds back. After follow-up, that feeds back to strategy. So what happened? How did it go? After all this work went through, after this work cycle. Now, we have different teams basically for each section there, and different people in charge of each step of the way. Now, how I've heard about it at an agency I respect, link building agency I respect, is they basically have one person who's in charge of the contact finding. They're involved in strategy, but then then basically do everything from prospecting all the way down to contact finding and outreach. So they do a little bit higher touch than we normally do. So we tend to look for how do we templatize as much as possible, and so we can outreach to 1,000 people. They look for how do we templatize as little as possible and outreach to 10 people. So they're a very different approach, and with that kind of high touch approach comes a lot of attentions in detail on an attention to who is the absolute best person to contact here at this website. And we actually had started to do that. So we'll prospect big, right? We'll find 1,000 people we want to outreach to, but we'll break off 100, and we'll say we're going to do high touch here, and then do high volume with everybody else. So that's sort of a way we're constantly adapting and changing and evolving. So that's been one of our recent adaptations. But with the hopes of increasing our conversions on the higher value websites. But we're not passing up everything else, right? And that's just, I guess, a philosophical position we have. But we just don't. I don't think that you should pass up other. Just because somebody has a low domain authority, I don't think you should pass them up if they're relevant, right? So let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There was one other. We talked with the in-house team that was set up fairly similar to the team at the agency we spoke with, but this was where the individual SEOs I think they had about 15 or 20 SEOs. They were responsible not only for on page, but all the off page as well. So what had kind of emerged, but they hadn't integrated across their company, was that this one guy for one of the clients, aren't they? I don't think they're. I forget if they're ancient. But anyway, one guy from one of the sites got really good at guest posting, really effective, and he wasn't mass guest posting as the safe way. He was doing it the safe way. And so in speaking with him, it really made a lot more sense to take this guy and have him do guest posting because he's good at it and was effective at it. Have him do guest posting for all of the sites, right? All the sites they're working on. I think they either owned a lot of sites or maybe they were an agency. I don't remember. So if there is somebody on your team that's naturally good at something, work with them to establish processes that either have them do it across everybody else, or work with them to establish processes for everyone else to do. And we didn't see that happening. I don't hear that happening a lot of times. Is really looking at what are people good at on my team or in my company, and then how do we either put that person in charge of just that, like make them a little more specialized, or have them establish processes for other people to follow. So we do a little bit of both actually at our company. So we find people who are really good at things, and we say, okay, how do we get this person? How do we? We'll put them in charge of that specialized task, and then we'll also have them create documentation, because that's if we lose them, we want to be able to plug somebody else in there towards the end, or we want to be able to plug someone else in there. So let's see here. Our hacks are we don't put a single person in charge of all aspects of the campaign. We just don't do that. It's done, and I don't, it just doesn't feel safe to me. It doesn't feel like an effective way forward, because I think there's going to be tactical blindness. I think there's going to be tactical. You're going to lean on a tactic that you're comfortable with, and continue to do that if you're the solo link builder for a given website. So if you're able to kind of have people in charge of different aspects of the approach, you put them at what they're good at. Let's see. Oh, this was kind of embarrassing, but it wasn't until about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, that we started setting outreach goals, like numerical outreach goals. We want to outreach to 10,000 people this month. It wasn't. I mean, I don't know why it was the most. And I'm probably not telling anyone out there, anything they don't know already. But set goals, set very specific numerical goals, and we find that outreach is the number that makes. If we're doing everything else right, outreach is the number. The volume of outreach is the number that makes the most difference on the volume of links we build. And then be open to pivots, and that's at all levels. So for us, the pivoting are, well, I'm probably using the word incorrectly, so forgive me for any grammarians or anyone that might aggravate a bit. But so pivot, we pivoted our team, our contact finding team, and we started to think of them differently and started to think of them as the data team, right? So, and that's what I would suggest is rather than, maybe pivot is the right word, but finding that the person who excels at a given task, and rather than having them just do that one task in a silo, have them do that task for all of your properties. You will have to adjust the perhaps the scope of how you're operating, or adjust your workflow. But that, I think, if you can find somebody who's good at a single tactic, putting them in charge of that tactic in as many places as possible is going to benefit your organization. So just look at organizationally, are you set up properly? I think that's it, guys. We're about at an hour here. I'm going to go back through some of the questions that Megan has. If anyone has questions, I'll stay on for another 15-20 minutes. And answer as well as I can, and then we'll do follow-up if needed in an article format that we'll be sending to you guys in our next newsletter. So I'm going to go scroll back up through the questions, and then maybe I'll even pick up with some brainstorming again. Go back into picking some of your suggested topics and running through the areas of human concern. We'll go for 20 more minutes here. So we've got how many results for a query would you say would make it a quality query? So I think what that question is asking me is how many results in Google for a given query would tell me that this is going to be a productive query. So we think about in terms of query productivity. How many results do I get for this? And I can assume that if I get a lot of results for links.html, that I'm going to get a lot of results for links.asp as well, or enough to make it worth prospecting, right? 335. So those are all probably going to be pretty useful, or at least worth investigating, worth qualifying. So how many results? I typically, my fallback is links.html. So I know this one pretty well across the main areas of human concern. So I look for 1,000. That tells me that this is going to be a productive way forward. At least 1,000. I wouldn't, if I saw 200 though, and I was a smaller in-house team, I wouldn't shy away from 200. I just, with the scale we operate at, we have to have a lot of opportunities. So I tend to go as big as we can. So that is a couple different ways to think about it, but ultimately it's going to depend on what your needs are and how big your team is and how many emails you can get out in a reasonable amount of time. So we've got what other tools? What other tools do you guys use to collect extra relevant data? People. That's I use the link prospector. Sometimes I'll go to, that's a great question because, we talked about these authority anchors. I used the example of the, for example, this one actually wasn't very productive, but you can head over to something like, you can go to Majestic and look at what are the anchor text or, now this, I think the question was more about gathering data on the individual URLs for qualification. That's what my assumption is, but this is another way we use tools all the time. So not many, I think we're looking at the wrong URL at the EPA for water conservation. Probably it's the right URL according to Google, but there's probably another URL on the EPA.gov's website that is a lot more about water conservation. Let's look at the anchor text. Oops, I better log in. One moment, guys. Oh, rattlesnakes. So I don't recall my password right now. Anyways, conserve water, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So what we could also do is just root domain and look at pages. I love this one. So I'm at the end of my, sorry, on this demo I don't have my login handy, and it's, for some reason my computer forgot it, or my Chrome forgot it. It should be just come right up. Anyways, why are you not remembering? Okay, let's see. Sorry guys. No, hold on, one more to try. That's my other standard one. So the reason I'm showing you this is that we so frequently use Majestic for identifying authority anchor text to use. Because I showed you an example where we just used the actual domain name, which is very productive, right? It's a very productive approach. But you can also look at, a huge authority website in that vertical and start to pull out stuff like, what is this page even about? This citizen page, that gets interesting. Lead, water sense. Now we're getting somewhere, folks. This is probably more about what we're looking for when it comes to water conservation. So we dug a little bit with Majestic, and we found. I just had a sense that there was going to be, a more productive way forward. It's only 8 here, but let's start to take out like the HTTP and the www at the beginning. 18. So this starts to get interesting, right? So people who are linking to the WaterSense program at the EPA, and again, remember, folks, we're looking at this from a very restricted lens. But this lens with the links.html shows me that there's more out there, right? That if I expand the parameters a bit, that we start to get a lot more results. So I go to just inurl links, we have 975. So again, when I do prospecting, I'm using the link prospector, which would do this query: inurl links, inurl links.html, inurl resources.html. You know, there's about 40 that are in there right now. So yeah, I mean this is so Majestic is just a vital tool for prospecting. I'm not going to pull all the backlinks to WaterSense. That wouldn't be unproductive, but it wouldn't necessarily be my first thought. It's more, how do we find productive research phrases? And Majestic is just brilliant at that. And another thing we do sometimes, this is when we go really big, is, and we haven't released this tool yet, but we have a link scraper, so we'll pull down everybody linking to this, right? So we'll pull them out of Majestic, and then we'll scrape all those pages and look to see who is linked to the most frequently on those pages. What that does is it opens us up to more new authority anchors to use in our prospecting. And it also shows us what are the most commonly linked to websites within this set of linkers. So we get a sense of what's important to these folks, to these linkers themselves, and that's that can be a really effective. That's really important information and knowledge to have. Let's see. So the question was, what other tools do we use? And right now, it's mostly the link prospector, the Majestic. I mean, we've got we're developing a contact finding suite. We're developing a data gathering suite as well for our team. So those will be out. It's going to be a while before those are commercially available, probably middle of next year. But we're building them for us first, of course, and then we'll be rolling them out. Alexander asks, is it possibly access to the document? This document here, absolutely. We'll definitely share it. And like I said, each one of these really deserves an article. Each one of these sections kind of deserves an article, so I'm going to be digging in on those. Tony asks, are we going to have a recording? We hope so. That was one of our goals. But so Steve says, I've used quotes before with my specific prospecting phrases. It doesn't seem to return relevant results. So without knowing the vertical, it would be tough. My first thought is, if I'm using quotes and I'm not seeing relevant results, is that there may not be pages that are about that, links pages that have that topic on them. So that would be step one, is, are there really links pages out there that exist for this topic, which there aren't for everything, which is, again, why I always try to bring us back to these areas of human concern, right? Because I know there are links pages for those. So it's how do we plug into how do we create relevance between these areas of human concern and what we're promoting, the website we're returning. Paper store, office supplies. So yeah, I'm not, I would back out of office supplies. I would back out of paper store and look for, how do we connect with these big areas of human concern, larger areas of human concern. And off the top of my head, now, maybe like a small business guide to the minimum number of the smallest amount of office supplies you're going to need to get started, like the small business starter kit, office supply starter kit, and really kind of think about it, think it through, make an infographic about it perhaps, or maybe even a slider to kind of something that would, like, what type of business are you, like, how do you invoice, how do you do this, how do you do that, just so people can, sort of an office supply estimator for a small business. That could be interesting, right? Like, and I think then you're not plugging into office supplies, you're plugging into small business, you're plugging into your customers. So you could also roll it out, you could say the lawyer's guide to office supply cost estimates, and then look for websites that are specifically about starting a law firm. Same for doctors, same for whoever. But then you're not stuck in office supplies, right? You're able to access these areas of human concern as opposed to living in the world of office supplies. It's a great. I mean, there's probably stuff you can do there. Don't get me wrong. There's probably a ton of DIY stuff. I'm not sure. Maybe some pollution-oriented stuff like how green office supplies can impact using green reducing office supply usage. Sorry, that's probably may not be a good direction, but how to reduce office supply usage so you're helping keep the environment clean. Again, is prospecting outside of just what you're trying to build links to, like just your homepage or just your product pages, and saying, how do I create a piece of content or a resource or a utility or an app or what have you that is going to be useful for for this target market or this target subset of linkers. So let's see. Mike, prospects into a standardized process to make it more efficient. I need more on that, Mike. Help flesh that out a little bit if you're still listening. Love to answer your question. There's a lot of tedium and inefficiency that we deal with on a regular basis. So number one is I hate tedium. So I find people who like it because they're out there, and I give it to them as much as possible. So if you can, break apart the tedium into specific, clear tasks, then you're going to have less tedium, and you're going to have other people doing the stuff you hate, so you can do more of the stuff you like. I used to tell that to new hires. I don't say it anymore, but I used to say, I'm so glad you're here because I hated doing this. It was obviously not an effective thing to say to someone who's just getting started working with you, but anyhow, I really look at outsourcing or hiring for stuff that I don't like to do. Oh, this is interesting. This is again from Mike. I presume the same Mike, but I know there could be more than one Mike out there. How do you handle sites that are relevant on a site or category level, but not on a specific page level? The links page doesn't fit, but their site category is related. This is great. What angle do you use when approaching them without a specific page in mind? This is lovely. I mean, I would say, I would sort of say, all right, with this particular opportunity, we're going to explore things other than links. We're going to say, how do we engage with this website in a productive way that could result in a share if it's an influential website, a Twitter share, a Facebook share. Maybe they have a blog. Then you sort of adjust course a little bit. You think about what kinds of you of course look at their blog. Would they be open to a guest post, or don't even call it a guest post, but something from you, from your organization? Would they, if you could come up with, if you could make something newsy enough, like kind of a story that is relevant to their market or their audience, that could be something that you could go to them with as well. So I would definitely say if the site is, you feel like it's an important website, it'd be useful to be in front of their audience, then look at what kinds of platforms or channels they're using. Do they have an email newsletter? Do they have a blog? Do they have a Twitter page? Do they have a Facebook page? And what kinds of content are they pushing there? Then how do you help them support their mission while supporting your mission at the same time? It's a lot of that we don't do that very often because we're looking, we charge per link, so we don't charge per tweet, so we don't really care if that happens or not, as from an economic standpoint, a purely economic standpoint for the company. But and of course it's great for the client, we're happy. But but if you're in-house, then that could be fine. I mean, you never know where that tweet's going to take you, right? You never know who might link to you afterwards or might reach out because they saw it. So I would spend a minute and look at that site and say what other kinds of channels are they touching their audience through, and then how do we intersect on those channels in a way that's productive to both every party. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm not seeing any more questions, and I'm getting into the hungry stage of my day where I need to eat. I was so excited I didn't eat lunch, and now here I am, and I ready to wrap up. So any last minute questions, get them over right now. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and wrap here. And I'll thank you guys. And one thing I really value from everyone who's either listening after the webinar or listening now would be an email, Garrett at Citation Labs, Garrett at citationlabs.com, with any kinds of recommendations you make on the presentation style. I am getting into a new phase of my life where I'm saying, okay, I want to become a much better presenter. I enjoy it, I really love it, but I know I have some areas that could be improved. I greatly value from anyone who, whether you've presented before or not, the kinds of what you thought was effective, what you thought was ineffective, and help me become better. It's my request. And of course, any other thoughts you have on other webinar topics in the future. If you want to have if you think of brainstorming, along the areas of human concern, a webinar dedicated just to that, I think I'd enjoy that. So if we can get enough interest around that, we could put something out just on brainstorming of content products for these for a given specific niche that would target these areas of human concern. I think that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, I really, if you've made it all the way here, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you listening all the way through. We're going to go ahead and wrap now, and let me just take one last check here. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So so long, and we'll see you shortly on video, and we'll be publishing a blog post with this video in it, and then I'll see you guys on the next webinar. Thanks so much.